The Earth's climate has never been stable. For thousands of years, it has always naturally evolved. This variation has mostly been imperceptible compared to human timelines, but current global warming is unique in its speed and in its magnitude. Year after year, we can feel its effects on our daily lives. An unprecedented acceleration in climate change has been underway since the end of the 20th century and will most probably continue at least until 2050. We know that the current significant increase in the Earth's temperature is a direct consequence of greenhouse gases generated by human activities such as industry, transport and agriculture. We can no longer do anything about the emissions of the past that triggered the climate disruption we are experiencing today. But by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions now, we can still positively influence the Earth's climate for the future. And indeed, this is the goal of the measures taken by the nations of the world following the Paris Agreement, which aims to mitigate the effects of climate change and stabilize the increase in global warming below 2 degrees instead of over 4 degrees if we don't act collectively today. In the meantime, based on current rates, the broad outlines of the climate scenario that awaits us for 2050 are already clear. Even though climate change is a global phenomenon, the impact it has will vary over different regions of the world. That's why climate researchers are currently developing targeted methods and models that can produce precise and localized projections for specific areas around the world. We can use this data to get an idea of how climate change in 2050 will have reshaped the living environment, landscape, and geography of Europe. And this will help us to better anticipate the adaptations that will become necessary. The warming in continental Europe is higher than the global average. This means, for example, that a typical summer of 2050 will be hot and even scorching for the inhabitants of the Mediterranean basin, because in summer, much stronger warming is expected in southern Europe than anywhere else in Europe, at around 1 degree higher than the global average. In southern regions, the decrease in rainfall and the increase in evaporation will accelerate the progressive drying out of the soil. On a positive note, the increase in surface solar radiation could provide a boost for solar energy production. Even though overall the Mediterranean climate will become drier, the region could also see some much heavier autumnal rainfall. All of Europe will be subject to longer and more exceptional heat waves, and episodes like the one in 2003 will become increasingly common by 2050. Andalusia, for example, may well experience more than 20 days above 40 degrees every summer. Even more northerly regions, such as Germany, could experience several days a year above 35 degrees. In winter, the effects of the warming will be most strongly felt in northeastern Europe. There'll be fewer days of frost on the plains, and the snow cover period will become shorter. The reduction in snow cover, together with the warming of the Arctic, will turn the northern part of Europe into a real global warming hotspot. Climate change occurs more rapidly in mountains than in the surrounding plains, and the warming will be felt the most at higher altitudes. Winter sports on mountains will have to be totally reinvented at altitudes under 1,500 meters, where the snow will be ever more rare. And what about rainfall? Well, we should expect more intense and almost more frequent periods of rainfall, increasing the flooding risk for some regions. And over the continent as a whole, rainfall levels will undergo some stark contrasts, with much more rain in winter in the north and much less rain in summer in the south. This will create a fluctuating transition zone between the southern and northern parts of Europe. The climate of our cities will also change, a change accentuated by the urban heat island phenomenon that produces city temperatures higher than those in the countryside. European metropolises will undergo a major climatic disruption during the coming century. Just imagine that in 2050, London's climate might be more like Barcelona's in the year 2000, or that Parisians might have the climate of current-day Istanbul. Such a major disruption of the European climate highlights the importance of our actions to bring down greenhouse gas emissions, as it's the coming decades that will have the strongest influence on future climate stabilization. So while we work towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions as a global community, Europeans, just like the inhabitants of other parts of the world, will also be locally adapting their ways of life to the changing climate. And the projections for 2050, drawn up by scientists, will be essential to help us find the right adaptation strategies for our societies and to build our future together.